Hello, I'm Natasha Gutierrez. Welcome to Talk Thursday. In December 2013, the Manila Electric Company or Meralco announced an unprecedented 4 pesos and 15 centavos rate hike. Meralco says it was forced to buy more expensive power from the spot market after the Malampaya plant shut down for its scheduled maintenance. It also blamed government-controlled power generator PSOM for the rate hike. Petitioners, though, accused Meralco of colluding with power producers. They also criticized the Energy Regulatory Commission for approving the increase. With us today is Bayan Muna Representative Neri Colmenares, one of the petitioners against Meralco's rate hike. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Why don't we start from the very beginning? What drove you to file the charges?
Well, our petition rested on 2 grounds. The first is ERC, we believe, committed grave abuse of discretion when it allowed or approved the rate hike of Meralco despite 3 unprecedented events. First, it was the largest rate hike in history. Second, it took place in a context of simultaneous shutdowns. If only for this, ERC should have, waited a little and said, "Oh, we'll investigate a little." But no, ERC approved it. And thirdly, ERC knew at the time that Meralco, the buyer of electricity, ordered Aboitiz, the seller of electricity, to bid a higher rate for its electricity. Practically, the buyer telling the seller to sell me your supply at a higher cost. So all these 3 unprecedented events, we believe, was a grave abuse of discretion on the part of ERC in approving the rate hike. Of course, the second reason, the second ground that we used in our petition was the fact that we believe that IPIRA in itself is unconstitutional because it allowed this automatic pass-through, which we believe is not consistent with public interest. So those are the reasons why we went up to the Supreme Court, hoping that the Supreme Court will permanently enjoin the Meralco and Gencos from imposing such a rate hike.
So is that the reason why you went straight to the Supreme Court? Because some people are saying that there might have been more administrative remedies that could have been done before going straight to the High Court.
Actually, we think that we were right. In fact, ARC actually said that the Supreme Court was the venue. The first thing is, there were no hearings in ERC. So how can you even become a party to something, which there was no official proceedings?
Okay.
And secondly, under the Libel Law itself, it says that if you're going to ask for a restraining order, only the Supreme Court can grant it. So there was no way we can ask for a TRO from ERC because only the Supreme Court can grant it. And that's what the Libel Law says. So I think this argument of Meralco before that the forum is wrong is actually the one that's wrong. Because if we went to the ERC, no TRO would have been issued and Meralco would have imposed its 4 peso 15 rate hike.
So from the way things have run, you're even more sure of yourself that this was the right venue and there was no other
yes. In fact, all these arguments about forum are proven wrong when the Supreme Court issued the first TRO. If the Supreme Court thought a little bit that this was not the proper forum, they would not have issued the TRO.
Okay.
The second TRO practically demolishes that argument. I mean, the Supreme Court would not have granted a second TRO if it thinks it was the wrong forum. So I guess that issue is now moot and academic.
So now we're on our second TRO. When you first came forward with the Supreme Court, what is it that you wanted to see?
Well, initially, of course, the main petition is for the Supreme Court to enjoin, permanently, of course, the imposition of the rate hike. But we also wanted the Supreme Court to review IPIRA.
Okay.
The fact that generation companies are not even considered public utilities, is that constitutional? The fact that pass-on charges are automatic and provisional approvals, like what the ERC did, is the rule. We're asking the court, is that really consistent with the principles of the Constitution? I mean, if you operate a tricycle, you're a public utility, but you operate a Genco, and you control practically, a huge amount of the economic sector, you're not a public utility. You regulate a tricycle driver, but not a Genco. That's what we're saying to the Supreme Court. And of course, the automatic pass-through. You see, pass-through electricity rates has an effect not only on the household there. In fact, the issue of Meralco is not only an issue of Metro Manilans. This is an issue for an entire country. Why? Because the moment Meralco imposes its rate hike, it has an inflationary impact. All the major factories are here in Metro Manila, the big ones, with electricity bills running to 100 million pesos a month. The moment you have a rate hike, the prices of commodity rises. And everything you sell in the provinces, of course, it will rise. So, in fact, this one is non-refundable. Meralco at ERC always says, well, if we find out later that the rate was improper, you can always refund. The first problem there is it's really difficult to refund.
Correct.
It's 3 years. But the second problem there, and more important problem, is this. You cannot refund inflation. If you bought a pair of shoes for 1,000 pesos because of the rate hike now, you cannot go back next year and say,
lose money.
Yes, you cannot go back and say, well, it was actually overpriced because Meralco in the end lost. So for us, the TRO was very important because not only for household expenses, but for the inflationary impact that it will generate.
Okay, so now that you have the TRO, what's the next expectation? You're mentioning EPIRA. Do you want them to repeal it? Obviously, they're
Yes. We were hoping
that's the ultimate goal.
Because I think all this started with EPIRA.
Okay.
If EPIRA only, of course, did not allow the deregulation of the GenCos, if EPIRA only allowed for regulation and of course no automatic pass-through, this would have not happened easily. Probably it will happen. ERC will probably, approve it after 4 months of hearing or 3 months. But at least there was an opportunity for the people to contest it, to ask for documents. But because of EPIRA, that's how it goes. So we're hoping the Supreme Court will still strike down these provisions, not only because they're inconsistent with public interest, but it's really absurd, as I mentioned. A GenCo, not a public utility. There's even no franchise we can cancel now. Even if collusion is found, we can't even cancel a franchise because they don't have a franchise.
Okay.
So that's I still hope that the Supreme Court will see our way here and still strike down those provisions in the EPIRA.
Okay, let's say everything goes according to plan. They strike it down. They repeal the law. You still have to amend this. It's going to take a long time. What are the immediate government measures that the administration can take then?
For me, even without the resolution of this case, even without the amendment to EPIRA, government can start building plants. It takes 4 to 5 years to build a power plant. So government has to respond now. And it's not true that EPIRA prohibits government from building plants. In fact, I always challenge Malacanang, point to us the provision which says you cannot build power plants.
So that's something they can start doing now.
Yes, you can start doing now because everybody is saying there is no undersupply now. It will probably happen, 2, 3, 4 years later. So you have to prepare for that.
Okay.
If government is saying, oh, there will be an undersupply 3 years from now, anyway, we will ask the private sector to come in. We disagree with that. We think energy is so important. Government has to take, control of that sector rather than sell it to private corporations.
We know we have one of the highest rates of power rates in the world. What do you think that's the root of the problem? What's the root of the problem? Why are our prices so high in the first place? Is it because there's a lack of, initiative from the government? Is it the EPIRA law?
Yes. Well, EPIRA is one major problem. We've seen a lot of sweetheart deals where we always charge government with concocting these sweetheart transactions with various companies where the people lose in the end and the corporation earns guaranteed profit. EPIRA is a sweetheart law.
Okay.
The entire law is a sweetheart law for various private interests. It favors Meralco, it favors the grid company that will take over, it favors the GenCo, it favors everybody except the Filipino people. Okay. So for us, that's the root there. So the problematic aspects of EPIRA, of course, pass-through, the fact that they are not considered public utilities and therefore deregulated in that sense. WESM for us should go. WESM has no place. Okay. There should be no WESM. Of course, because we disagree with privatization, PISAM has to go. And we disagree, and we have a bill, in fact, saying that no more sale of government assets on energy. Agus Pulangi, even this the decrepit Malaya plant, no sale. You rehabilitate it. And you challenge the GenCos in energy supply so that at least government has at least a handle on the generation sector.
Okay, sir. Very interesting, because it seems that to you there's so many loopholes in the law.
So many. In fact, we don't know how Congress passed that law. Can you
In the first place.
imagine automatic pass-through? As did Congress ever think that the moment you pass through a rate increase, the inflation that it will create can never be turned back? Sorry. So the explanation of GenCos is, oh well, it has to be automatic because sometimes the dollar goes up and goes down, so at least we have to recover immediately the cost.
Yes.
Or fuel sometimes goes up, goes down. An ordinary driver has to carry the cost of the increase in diesel for 1 year before a rate adjustment is undertaken. And you, GenCos, you're supposed to be guaranteed those profits. Isn't it a part of your business? So you, of course, you predict how the fuel prices will go up. You have the capacity to do that.
Okay.
And then you put it in your production cost as part of your cost. But for us to, have all these automatic pass-through rates just because you claim that the dollar went up or went down, whatever, it's unacceptable. And Congress, for me, promised a lot when they passed IPIRA. That promise has failed, and it's about time we really turn off the lights on IPIRA.
Okay. We both acknowledge that charges go up and down depending on the year. If you think that the December charges were too high, what would have been an appropriate charge, for instance?
Well, the November and the December rate hikes were very high because we believe of the WESM as a part. And secondly, we would also like to look at the contracts, not just the WESM. There were contracts during the Malampaya shutdown which we believe should be examined too, because they were fairly high too. Now, why did it increase that way? To a large degree, of course, it was the bid of Meralco, the 62 peso bid, the famous bid, where Meralco went to the market and said, how much is your rate? And Aboite said 8 pesos, and Meralco said, can you sell it for 62? I will buy it, which is absurd, of course.
Right.
So, and they did it in the December 21 times. If they did it in December 4 times and the rate increase was 4 pesos 15 cents, they did it 21 times in December. And the rate now is 5 pesos 33 cents. There were 2 rate increases here. 1 4 pesos, 1 5 pesos, a total of 9 pesos, more or less. That's really, that will really destroy many businesses, probably many family, the income of many families. So, for us, there is no way but for the ERC and the Supreme Court to trim it down. What is the cost? For me, because there was collusion. For me, because there were simultaneous shutdowns and bidding. For me, production cost is the fair cost here. Production cost because how much did you spend to produce that electricity? We pay for that production cost during the November and the December months. Of course, I'm tempted to say zero because they're blaming everybody, Natasha. The GenCos blame,
Correct.
Meralco blames Malaya for not running the government. Malaya government blames GenCos for simulated undersupply. The GenCos blame WESM. Meralco blames everybody
Correct.
except Meralco. But in the long run, they can blame each other, but not the people, the consumers. So if, whoever committed mistake there, you pay for that. So for us, there should be no imposition on the part of the people. The one who created that price rate, whether Meralco or GenCos or WESM, you pay for that because the Filipino people had no hand in any of those transactions.
Although for the Filipino people who don't really understand the way it works, for most people, the only thing they see is Meralco. So most of the blame goes to Meralco. Ultimately, whose responsibility do you think it is to at least make sure that the cost is not passed on to the consumers?
Well, for one, ERC is, of course, the regulator there. ERC makes sure.
Yes.
ERC cannot just merely say that, well, IPIRA says
It's
it
okay,
should be
yes.
passed through. You're a regulator. You're supposed to regulate market abuse. Meralco too. just because it's passed through, Meralco wouldn't care. Dapat Meralco should care too, di ba?
Right.
I mean, so if it's 62 pesos, Meralco has all the right and the duty to say, oh, this is a bit much. Can you explain this?
Okay.
Rather than just pass it through.
How about the Department of Energy? How do they come in here?
Oh, the DOE, well, being the DOE is part of the regulatory process in the sense that it controls the ERC.
So would you say they all kind of play the role in this?
I think all of them play the role. I wouldn't put any of the players here as blameless. Even the WESM. WESM will say, oh, we just accept the bids but no, as the market operator, you're supposed to say, how come it reached 62? You see, the normal thing to do in bidding is, if I will bid 15 pesos per kilowatt hour, and somebody bids at 14, I end up with electricity I will not be able to sell.
Correct.
So your tendency is to sell at the very, amount where you think it will be bought.
Right.
Nobody bids at
For the benefit
20,
of all, right?
30, 40 pesos because you won't sell. But this time, confidently, you bid 62 pesos 25 times. There must be collusion here for us. Otherwise, why are you so sure that you will get bought at 62?
So, sir, you think that the WESM bidding rules are flawed?
Oh, very flawed. This is the situation here. Meralco says, tomorrow I need 1,000 megawatts. One Genco said, oh, I'll sell you 600 megawatts at 6 pesos. The other Genco says, I'll sell you 300 megawatts at 3 pesos. The remaining 100 megawatts, the Genco C says, I'll sell you 100 megawatts at 62 pesos. What is the price of the market? It becomes 62 pesos. So the one who bid 6 pesos for 600 megawatts, turns out 62 pesos na pala ibabayad sa kanya. Di tuwan-tuwa siya. Kasi he was ready to part with his electricity at 6 pesos. Now it's bought at 62. So what kind of rule is that? The highest bidder gets I thought it was supposed to be the lowest bidder. So it's flawed. And for me, all energy requirements should be contracted. Nobody plays in the WESM. Meralco, how much do you really need? 7,000 megawatts. You contract it out.
So that's getting rid of WESM.
Yes, you get
altogether.
rid of WESM. So you contract out. Okay, I'll contract my 7,000. But Meralco always contracts 90% of its supply. The 10% it plays in the WESM. So practically, when it ordered Aboitiz to bid at 62, the 10% that Meralco bought from WESM became 62. So the supply it bought increased by virtue of its own action of ordering Aboitiz. Meralco said, well, actually, we didn't pay Aboitiz 62. We paid Aboitiz 8 pesos because that's our contract. Yes, that's true. But you also bought a 10% supply here, which it costs 62 now.
So you played a part in that.
Yeah, so spot market for me is really, the WESM especially, is really ripe for manipulation, and it's so untransparent, and I think it has no place in our energy sector.
Well, there seems to be so many steps or loopholes that we want to close.
Yes.
What is your priority at this point?
Well, for us, of course, other than the Supreme Court decision, we are now crafting the alternative to EPIRA. We've started to get there. There are technical, financial, and other reasons, factors in crafting the bill. But I think we'll get there. Maybe by March, mid-March or end of March, we'll be able to file the bill. We're still consulting with many experts and concerned sectors. But I guess we'll get there because we want the bill to be realistic naman. Of course, we are going to ambition in the end an energy sector where government, of course, is the one that controls. We dislike privatization, to be courteous about it. However, in that there's a transition period. So
yes, exactly.
The fact is, reality says that 70% of government assets are now privatized. So we have to contend with that in a transition period. That's where the problem is. So the crafting of the bill requires a lot of study. But I think whatever the opinion of many people as to how the alternative should go, there's one thing clear. I think almost everybody now says that IPIRA has to go. IPIRA
Right.
cannot exist. And I think the battle we started way back in 2001 when we began to battle IPIRA, and we got frustrated every Congress that we filed a bill to repeal it and craft the law that
This
will
may be the easiest Congress for you.
for us, there is this
Since
chance,
2001.
no? Strangely, yung mga suntok sa buwan na laban namin, like abolition of pork, a political dynasty, medyo gumagana ngayon. So, hopefully, yung IPIRA battle namin will also gain headway and hopefully pass Congress, this 16th Congress.
So ironically, I guess there's a good side to this. I mean, for the first time, you're saying that it's opened the eyes of the people, the Congress, that there is inherently a problem with IPIRA.
Yes, I'm a member of Congress, but I don't think those developments and changes came about because of the altruism of members of Congress. It came about because of people pressure from the outside. There would be no movement on pork unless there was an outrage
Regardless
outside.
of it, exactly, okay.
IPIRA too, of course, is moving because people are saying that law practically impoverished us. So no members of Congress are saying they're actually right. So for me, these changes were brought about not because there was something happened inside
Negative
Congress,
happened.
but because something happened outside Congress. And we've always maintained that. Bayan Muna have always believed we can draft the best bills, we can make the most articulate, privileged speeches. It will be all useless unless there is outrage outside. And for us, that's really, even this Supreme Court petitions, the TRO, people are saying, oh, congratulations. We said, oh, if it was a lonesome battle for us over there,
It would never have made it there.
I think it will not really get that much easy, action from the various agencies. So I guess in the end, it was because of people's actions outside that made the difference here.
Okay. And while you're here, especially because it is what everyone is talking about at the moment, what is your reaction to the cybercrime law Supreme Court decision?
Well, as a petitioner, of course, we disagree with the Supreme Court decision.
The biggest problem right now from the decision being?
Well, online libel is one of the biggest. And for us, well, the problem with the cybercrime law is this. Government has been scaring people. We need the cybercrime law because otherwise there will be hacking, child pornography in the internet, cyberbullying, and etc. But we're saying there are laws that already took care of this. For child pornography, there's a Child Pornography Act. Computer fraud, internet fraud, there's the e-commerce code. Hacking, etc. Data Privacy Act. There are laws in place. So, what's the... I mean, even libel, there's a libel law in the revised penal code. There's also, of course, a civil code for any libel you commit in the internet or on TV.
In any medium.
So what's the purpose of the cybercrime law? For us, the cybercrime law was merely focused by government actually on the dissent. They can no longer withstand the heat in the internet and online. So for us, the intent of the cybercrime law was to stifle this press and freedom of expression. So,
which the president himself said yesterday that he didn't think that was the goal of it. He actually disagrees.
Well, he made two wrong premises there. He said, well, your right ends where my right begins and you can't abuse it. But we're saying if you abuse your right without the cybercrime, for example, cybercrime law was struck down and you abuse your right, there are laws already that remedy it. In place. Secondly, if what you're saying is true, then you shouldn't be afraid. He doesn't know that under our libel laws, truth is not a defense. So even if you say this congressman, this senator is corrupt because so and so and so and so, turns out to be true, he goes to court and says you have to prove that you had a good intention in saying that, and you failed to prove your good intention, you go to jail.
Even if it's true.
Even if it's true. So he's wrong in his analysis there. And lastly, there's a debate about the elements, but in the end, Natasha, it doesn't even matter. If you get hailed to court and a warrant of arrest was issued against you You stayed in jail overnight, tomorrow you post bail, and for the next 1 year, you go to court every month for your hearings, and in the end, you get acquitted because you didn't really fit the elements of the cybercrime libel law, which is vague and overbroad. But you've suffered for 1 year already.
Correct.
Isn't that
Financially
a
and
chilling?
time.
Yes. Isn't that already a chilling effect on a media person? So our proposal, we have a bill in Congress to decriminalize libel because we believe that, as many countries did, libel is no longer criminal. You know, they will, most of the congressmen, they would tell us when we filed the bill, "Oh, but Neri, if you decriminalize libel, we will be libeled every day."
Anybody could just say anything.
Yes, and I said, is that the nature of the Filipino people? Now that there's no libel law, you just libel everybody? Hindi naman ata ganun ang Pilipino. But in any case, pag may ganung itirada sa mga congressman, di sagutin mo. Sa bayan muna naman, araw-araw naman tinitira kami sa
Demands more
kung
transparency,
saan-saan, di ba?
correct.
Di sagutin mo na hindi tama. Ngayon, kung nanggigigil ka, mayroong civil code for damages, but you don't send to prison a
Criminal.
person. Hindi ito evil. Ang evil sa amin na isend po sa prison ng rape, pumatay. Ito, it was expressing his disgust at your performance as a congressman.
And to put that in the same level as rape, you think is inherently the problem.
Yes, precisely. So, no one should go to prison for the mere exercise of the constitutional right to freedom of expression or free press. So, ayaw ng, so hindi pumapasa-pasa ang anti-libel, yung decriminalization of
So
libel
yun,
bill namin.
walang movement yun specific.
Walang movement. So, kahit sa paano, sa Supreme Court, nagtagumpay kami in a sense, of course, kasi may ibang na-struck down. But of course, very important sa amin ang online libel kasi kakaiba na siya ngayon sa libel laws na traditional eh. Yung online libel ngayon talaga, very broad na siya.
The
Transfer,
scope,
yes.
correct.
Now, anybody can really be a victim here. At ang sabi ng iba, kasi meron naman sa internet kasi na nang bubuli, etc. Sabi nga namin may batas. Mararamdaman nyo po ang epekto ng cyber libel laws pag yung sarili nyo ng anak na gumagamit ordinarily ng internet ay kakasuhan.
And expressing themselves.
Oo, doon ka na talaga makaramdam na ay grabe nga palang epekto nito.
So what are your immediate legal actions for this?
Well, the legal, of course, we're going to file a motion for reconsideration.
Okay.
But you see, the problem here is wala pa kaming kopya ng decision. And we're faced with so many cases. May pork barrel kami na petition, may Meralco, may cybercrime.
So FOI you're trying to push.
Yes, and lawyers are not, hindi naman kami mayaman na maraming lawyers. Maybe Meralco had the best lawyers that money can buy, as we say it. We have the best lawyers that money cannot buy, which is very few and far between dito. So, hindi namin alam kung paano, but we'll definitely file a motion for reconsideration. The second point that we probably will push is the decriminalization of libel. I heard that some senators are supportive of it. Maybe we can gather some support in Congress. Kasi the moment that the libel law under the revised penal code is repealed, then it takes away the foundation of the cybercrime libel.
Correct.
Mawawalan siya ng basis. So that solves the problem, at least in that respect. So there are two tracks that we're thinking of, but in the end, babalik ako sa thesis ko kanina. It's always people's action. When you spread the word through the internet and people respond, there is always, for every action, there is a reaction. And there's always a response in Congress. At least I can speak for Congress. As I've mentioned during the pork battles, even you have 100,000 rallies, o 10,000 kataong sumama sa rally, or 1,000, there was always a response, a reaction in Congress. So it matters whether it's 100,000 ang sumama, o 10,000, o 1,000. So just keep it up.
About it, correct.
Just keep it up. Kasi natitense ang Congress every time there's a rally
Whether it's 10 or 10,000.
Yes. Hindi sila nakaka-distinguish na yan kasi parang besieged na ang Congress noon So may impact yun. So whether your rally mo is about Meralco or the cybercrime law, or very important yung public response sa mga issues na to, and I think that this is what really matters in the end, and is the difference kaysa sa dati at sa ngayon.
I think that's a great way to end. You're clearly very busy, and I think it's a great reminder also for people to get involved and of what effect that can have to people like you who are in power to do something about it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Bayan Muna Representative Neri Colmenares about the Libel Law as well as Meralco, and also we even touched on cybercrime law. Thank you for joining us at Talk Thursday. I'm Natasha Gutierrez.